guys, good morning everybody. Thank you very much for coming. Thanks for Steve for arranging it all for us and putting it on. So, we're just going to try and give you a bit of a run through. I'm going to share a little bit of my own personal journey, my own personal story. I'm going to tell you a little bit why Claritee is being formed, and the guys who are a lot more qualified than me at the back of the room are actually going to give you, they do proper presentations, I just make stuff up. So we'll see how it goes. So a little bit about me. I am 44 years old. I am a serial entrepreneur. I set up my first business when I was 20 years old. I have had a multitude of businesses over the last 24 years. Probably in my height, I had 7 businesses at one time. Currently got 3. Like to just do things. Like to keep busy. Don't like to have a boring life. Set out on a little bit of a journey of problems and hit a bit of a wall, should we say. So about 5-6 years ago, I got diagnosed with an undiagnosable eye condition and ended up losing the sight of the left eye, 90% of it, and at one stage couldn't read or write text, or couldn't read or do emails or anything. So it's a pretty scary place, to be honest. And I decided that because of the era I'd been brought up in, that I would pretend to the outside world that everything was fine. I would get my head down, I would suck everything up and get on with it. And I ended up becoming an alcoholic. So I am still an alcoholic because it doesn't go away. And basically, it was through my own personal journeys. I spent 5 months in different rehabs around the world to go and work on myself. It took my son, who's actually at the back of the room today, to actually sit me down and say to me that he still needed me. His words to me were, he was 17 years old, I was 42 at the time, just about to go into my 5th stint in rehab, and he turned around to me and said, Dad, I'm 17, I still need you, you're 42, you still need your parents. And I'm a great believer in sometimes you hear something that you need to hear, you know, at a specific time. And we might not realise what it is at that time, it might be something that just sits with you, but I do truly believe. So basically I describe it as, I got myself in a total mess. I got to the stage where I didn't care whether I lived or died. And I make a joke of it now because I went upstairs and I'm not sure who I saw upstairs. I'm not sure whether I went to heaven or whether I went to hell, but whoever I spoke to said to me, there's no chance you're coming in, you are really annoying. You will try and absolutely batter my head every day. So you're going back down and you're going to go and do some good. So I was like, okay. So I came back out of the rehab and I decided I want to do something. I want to do something different. I've got great belief in that things need to change, people need to speak, people need to be comfortable. All this stigma around problems, all this stigma of you've got to be okay all the time. I just, things need to change from a work perspective. It needs to change from the top all the way down. And I collaborated with the guys and said, right, I want to set something up. Claritee was formed. Our strapline of Claritee, helping you see things more clearly, giving you a different way of looking at things. We can't remain in the same old way of looking at things. Me standing here today going, I'm an alcoholic. 10 years ago, nobody would have done that. 10 years ago, nobody would have done that, especially in a professional environment, because people would have been ashamed. People would have been ashamed, about having that problem and about having gone to that dark place. And I don't see it as a weakness now. I actually see it as a strength. I'd failed at nothing in my life before, and my biggest challenge was accepting failure, accepting it was okay to be defeated. I could not beat alcoholism. I couldn't beat the addiction. So it was accepting and going, okay, I failed. But does it matter if I fail? If I'm a professional football team and I lose a game at the weekend, does that matter? if I play a rugby match and I lose, does it matter? It's all perception, and I believe that our perceptions have to change. Stigmas have to change, our perceptions have to change, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to change. We're trying to help people to see things differently. So today, the guys are going to run through some various different things. We're going to talk about some different scenarios, some different ways of looking at things, and some useful tools, hopefully. So I just wanted to welcome you all, explain a little bit about who we are, what we do, and I will hand over to James to start us off. So thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, Alex. Morning. Morning. Yes, we've got some. Otherwise, we're going to good morning. Nice to have you here. Nice to see you. Thank you very much for attending. And as I said, we're here for a reason, because we've seen things get sticky, whether it's for individuals, companies, or collectives as a whole. There's lots of different ways where things can be less than ideal, and there's a lot of soaking up some of the effects of life. It's out there, things happen, there are requirements and demands, and each of us, from our own different stations, has seen that it's very beneficial to have somewhere to turn to, have ways of attending to it. There are so many different forms of getting through stuff, and we want to represent from our different strands how we do that, or how we help other people do that if they need to. So myself, I'm James Marquis. I'm a psychology professional. So I worked with the NHS for over 11 years, working in community mental health teams, and it was definitely on the front line in the community of where things can get very, very complex for people. So the education there was fantastic. The people I worked with in terms of the clients, but the people I work with in terms of the professionals, the education, the training, the seeing how things can be worked with and what available options there are to bring things around was just next level. But the NHS has its own complications in different ways. So I work with individuals now privately, I work with companies, I work with teams, groups, senior leaders, whatever's required. We just bring that order, bring that balance, bring things back into a space where it's healthily functional instead of drifting into potential dysfunction. Because that can happen, but there's ways to bring it back. And so we're focusing on working through adversity to opportunity. We all face adversity, the world will keep bringing different stuff as well. There will be challenges. But if there's anything that helps us to ground things back, stay on track, navigate through any of that to come to the good side, then we want to share in those little bits of tools and even snippets today. And it's those rocky moments, the underdog stories, the rising from the ashes. There are all these things that sound quite heroic, or in the end they can feel that way, but at the time it's not necessarily that it feels as adventurous. You can get confused. So for helping ourselves come through these times and that little bit screen. These are seen as the core traits of resilient thinkers. So it says there that we're able to adapt effectively to changing conditions, recover rapidly from setbacks, transform obstacles into opportunities, learn optimistically from failure, maintain enthusiasm despite challenges. These all sound positive, right? And they're easy to do, right? It's not so easy, but it absolutely is empowering stuff. So we understand that this is part of the framework, this is part of the things that we can aim ourselves towards if we want to be a resilient leader, whether that's just in our own personal life, never mind in a company, with organisations, or even leading our family. To be a resilient thinker, to be able to come from these kinds of mindsets, or to take these kinds of positions for ourselves personally, is something that's really useful, but it's not always easy just to maintain. So I'm bringing in 4 of the key things that help us maintain it. Perspective, we're talking about the ability to see the wood for the trees. If we get too absorbed, too immersed down into the trees for too long, again, whether it's personally, professionally, a combination of all the lot, if we are too immersed, too entangled in the trees too often, we might start to lose perspective. Something I heard just recently was a distinction between perception and perspective. And I like what they were saying. Even just conceptually, it makes some sense, it's useful. But the difference between perception and perspective. So perception is where your brain essentially just gives you a version of events. So perception can be a lot more reactive. Perception is stuff's happened, stuff's gone on, and you become aware of a viewpoint. Perspective is a different step on from that, where there's an ability to see it with a certain level of distance. There's some choicefulness of where you'll go about that. So, perception, if we get into being reactive, if we get into these spaces where we're starting to get more emotional, more tangled, less tolerance, short fuse, then sometimes that perspective will start getting lost, and we might make decisions that we regret or communicate with people in ways that are less than ideal. Things can start to get rocky. Maintaining perspective is such a powerful thing. One example, a nice little one, is that with traffic jams. Traffic jams are a thing. When you sat down in them and you're in the middle of it in your car, you kind of that's where the tension can come. That's where it can get quite frustrating. You can experience the stress with the traffic jam. If you take a helicopter ride 200 feet up and look down at that traffic jam, it's actually just quite interesting. You kind of go, oh, how lovely. But the difference in having a certain distance away from, and mentally, perceptually, we can come to everything that's gone on, everything that's going on. How do I step back? How do I regain perspective? How do I continue to maintain my ability? And it's from being able to get back out of the trees. Sometimes life just throws you right in there, but it is absolutely essential to push ourselves towards stepping back, breaking the space, and regaining perspective. Because the stress brain is not the best brain. I'll just say that in its own simple way, it explains itself. There's a video, a very brief 2.5 video from mine. We have the QR code at the end of the presentations today. All the resources are in there. So anything mentioned, you can go follow the QR code, download, watch, whatever. But this video explains the graph of like pushing it, we can end up going over the curve. On the side of the left there, this graph is not about the amount of stress, this is about performance. So it's a video that includes that positivity towards we have to push ourselves. We're in business, we're in work, we're in a modern world, there are requirements, there are demands. We are going to be asked to perform. We're going to ask of ourselves, we want to grow, we want to earn salaries, we want new positions, we want the company to become bigger, better, whatever. So performance is something inherently laid within us, absolutely. So we want to push ourselves, stretch beyond just being in comfort. We want to be going towards everything that's required to make progress. So that maximum performance is a nice feeling, it's a good thing. Absolutely. But if we push it too far for too long, we're in a space of strain, we end up pushing it too far that mental health or physical health starts to wobble, and we've started towards crisis. If we're going there too far, too often, too long, and we probably all know what that feels like, at some point you've done it to yourself. Gone towards frazzle. We must step back off that. Bless them. We must step back off that, come back to comfort, come back to being able to have a reprieve, to regain that perspective, to regain that physical or mental health. We must help ourselves along. Not going to teach anyone to suck eggs. All the healthy lifestyle things. Help yourself in different ways to maintain mental and physical equanimity and perspective. There are tools. So these are just 2 tools that I share pretty much with everyone. They're just 2 sheets of A4, and they have helped hundreds and hundreds of people to help frame their mindset around whatever's going on, regain their mindset when it's been really rocked and they've just got into a space of what the hell's going on for me and what else is going on in the world. Simple tools. They're just there as a flash thing. You can download these from the QR code, but in their own self, you can take yourself through them, and they can help regain perspective. They can help us at any point in time manage our mental health. This next one, confidere. I kind of wish I didn't put the extra piece up, but it's there. Confidere, so this is the Latin term that's the basis of the word we have with confidence. So we're saying that within adversity, we're moving through adversity into opportunity, there's a sense of maintaining that faith, that I can be alright, that the things can get resolved in the end, that my team around me are a good team, that I can get there, that we can get there, that everything can come through. This confidence, this sense of being able to align with having belief in ourselves, in our teams, in our organizations, in our products, in our services, it is a mindset we can choose and we can lead toward. Again, under duress, under too much stress, for too long, this can get eroded. When it does, as Alex said, I think we start to question ourselves, we all start to crumble, doubt and despair really toxic elements, but they are part of the human condition. Where they are playing out, we absolutely do need to treat ourselves right or get the right kind of supports in place, because until we get that mindset, that clarity towards what's possible, what we can do within ourselves for everything around us as is required, until we get that back, it can be rocky. There are so many ways to help get that back. I have to say it like that, but there are so many ways, and it's a beautiful thing to see people realign with themselves and refine that space. Churchill said, "For myself, I am an optimist. It does not seem much use to be anything else." It just sounds simple to me, and it's refreshing, because that ability to step into that direction, that kind of a way, it does empower people, but we understand that it can get wrong. That's why we're saying, as I said, you need that support sometimes. You need that thing to help you wobble your own head, if not give your head a wobble from a different angle. But it's well worth making sure that you do access whatever you need to access when you need it. Maybe it's to encourage the people to take things seriously, work with themselves properly, in whatever form we do it. And we can help if we need to. Now, the third thing, connection. Spoken about a lot in different ways, but I mean, it helps your physical health as much as anything else. So the amount of studies, the amount of research on connection, how valuable it is to the human condition, are just massive. But when it comes to mental health, that inclination to withdraw, the inclination to go towards alcohol instead of talking out to someone, the inclination to pull back from friends and family because of the shame. Alex mentioned it. You go into the thing where you start judging yourself, it's all going to shit, you give yourself grief about it. The inclination, when mental health is wrong, to withdraw inwards and turn inwards in negative ways, is a real powerful force. We really need the encouragement sometimes, or we really need the nudge, if not the drag, to come towards. Don't go and get lost in there. Don't get lost in the trees and come back out. There are ways to see this. There are ways to go about it. There are ways forwards. But it's imperative to have healthy, good, strong connections around us that we can trust. And if you feel like at any point it's not easy to find them, there are always options. Lots and lots of them. You can always signpost and give you some signposting at any point. Good luck. Reading that, of course, is not an easy thing. So this is a study in 2021 reported in the British Medical Journal of Psychiatry. There were 23,192 participants. Huge study, 18 to 85-year-olds, just on the back of obviously the big hits with COVID. I'm not going to read it, guys. But basically, the research, those things that you know, indicated that resilience has a positive relationship with mental health. Yes, absolutely. And that social support serves as the most powerful buffer against negative effects of lowered resilience on mental health. Just having the people around you, knowing that you've got that space to step out of your problem towards somebody who's outside of it is huge. It helps to leads towards healthier behaviours instead of dysfunctional ones, buffers against stress, prevents loneliness and isolation, makes saves lives. Without a doubt, there are many other campaigns. I'm not here to talk about that today, but the issues and the numbers around suicide, and just if we can help that in any shape or form, we do it. I did it for years in the NHS. Whenever there's a crisis or a scenario with a company, if I get that phone call, we help it. And literally, it can be a 20-minute conversation. 20-minute conversation can turn some things that have been maybe 10, 12 years in the making and got towards crisis point. It really, really is possible to help that come around. So if there's ever rocky, turbulent times, there are so many ways to help it. That's what we're here to do. Fourth piece, we've had perspective, we've had connection as was the complementarian, and then grit. Sometimes there is that thing of getting that thing inside of us of being able to stick into it, stick through, find your way. We don't want to do it unhealthily, we don't want to push that grit to a point where it's just forge on, forge on. Alex said it in the way when he was coming in. I was just keeping going and just, no, not going to crumble, I'm just going to push on, push on, push on. The alcohol will help me. Grit, healthily employed, is a very powerful thing. It's a mindset, it's that internal positioning, it's that commitment to self. I can do this, I can maintain it, but we want people to maintain it healthily. It's not just forging on and blindly, ignorantly ignoring the signs and symptoms. Pay attention to signs and symptoms. Whether they're personally, whether there's dysfunction between a team, a leadership team, or in the organisation, don't forge on disregarding the warning lights. We've got all the warning lights, stay strong, find a way, absolutely. If you're going through hell, keep going, because you kind of got it. But don't keep going alone. When you say it's lonely at the top, don't let it be. If you ever feel, and in your own business, like, no one else I can speak to about this, I've got to keep the face, I've got to do it a certain way, and keep up my bravado and everything like. Make sure there is a space where you're not just lonely at the top and it's all mask, and inside you're feeling something very different. For one, it's not enjoyable. Don't do it because it's not enjoyable, and don't do it because it's usually not very helpful. This one, I always say that if I have a skill to change man for person, I would upgrade this comment to very inclusive to all. But from church, I'm like a person who brings with me fire. It's that thing of like, we can turn towards diversity. We can turn towards it, we can engage it in a certain way. When we align ourselves with the adversity really effectively and successfully, it's a position where we can grow, we can develop in so many ways. It can be so valuable to face these tests and challenges. If we effectively and in a sustainable way approach these things and take them on, and find the growth, find the progress, and do that in a manner that's sustainable. Recapping all the stuff there, the 4 of them are very useful. Minimizing stress and maintaining perspective. Essential, it is a commitment to ourselves. We have to make very choicefully sometimes. That confidence, maintaining belief in yourself, in your product, in your company, in your team. If that starts to get rocked, there's some work to do. Connection, do it, maintain it, find your trusted, good people, keep them with you, keep them around you, and the grit to get through. There are books here, any one of those is an absolute education. There is a hell of a lot of science behind what I've spoken about today. There are a hell of a lot of wonderful examples that illustrate just how powerful these things can be. Any one of those books, whichever one might say right before you, but again, they're on that page with the QR code if you've not got them already. That's the end of what I'm saying. Tony's come in, and he's got a very huge wealth of experience in his own right as well. But then we want to be able to speak with you guys after we shared some stuff. We want you to be able to take some things away from what we've spoken about today, but also we want to be interacting with you in the show bar as well. First of all, Anthony Sandle.
Well done with the time, so hopefully I can be as good as well. We do have a propensity to speak us too, so we can run on.
We get passionate.
15 minutes maybe, even not. Hi everyone, my name's Tony. If Alex was talking about the clinical approach to what leadership is, to what coping mechanisms are, to what is leadership in the modern world, which is the short title today, I'm here ready to talk about practical application. So, no prizes for guessing what my background is. 34 years British military. I'm what's referred to as a late entry officer. I served full time for 34 years in the army. Left my full time career last year. I'm still a serving reserve officer, so I'm still a major in the British Army to this day, but now working in business. So, what qualifies me to speak in front of you today? It's a question which I always try and answer whenever I stand in front of an audience like this. I have led men and women in many different settings over the last 34 years. Some of them really challenging. I've been to war a couple of times. Some of them really fun. I've done a lot more adventurous training than I have going to war. So it's not all bad. But in each instance, in each situation, you can learn something about yourself, about leadership and practical application in the modern world. And that's what I'm here to do today, to talk to you about. I'm not talking at you, hopefully I'm talking to you. And if one of you can take one thing from something that I'm saying today, then my work is done. Really today is about me talking to you about the things that have worked for me and the things that I found out about myself. Most of us in this room, everybody in this room has studied at some stage to varying levels, and we all go on degrees. I was talking to someone earlier, Jonathan Roy. I was talking to Jonathan about, we've all done degrees, and lots of us have done MBAs and stuff like that, but I think the real lessons that I've learned have been in adversity, in those moments, and I wanted to share some of those tips with you today. So, in the modern world, and what do I mean by the modern world? Here's a warning, I'm going to use the C word. In the post-COVID world, everything has changed. The workplace has changed. We, as human beings, have changed. This is the first thing since the Second World War that currently affects every single person in each and every one of your workplaces. And I mean that sincerely. Even those of you who've just taken on a 16-year-old apprentice, they were 12 years of age, they were in their first or second year of secondary school, when COVID hit. This has affected everybody. And we've lost some skills, we've lost a bit of perspective, as James was talking about. And people are different these days, they just are. But haven't they always been so? Hasn't that always been us? So, what am I going to talk about today? Well, what is leadership? Is management different? Who are your greatest influences? Did you take the good and disregard the bad from people along the way? I know I certainly did. That's what the TTG and DTB are. A little bit about communication and the 5 why strategy, which is something I'm going to talk to you about. So what is leadership? Leadership in the modern world. I've just told you that each and every one of us were affected by COVID. Every single one. Just straw poll. Anyone think they weren't affected by COVID at all? Show of hands. You weren't in any way, shape or form.
No.
Did it stop you going out and doing your shopping?
Still doing shopping.
Did it stop you going out and doing what your normal daily business? Did you find different ways to do things?
Yeah.
And since then, have you? And I'm not trying to make you wrong. I like it when people do this.
Yeah.
Did you then find different ways of doing things, and have you retained some of those things post COVID?
I think me and my wife are quite grateful that we got through it.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much unscathed.
Good.
Especially when we look around.
Which is good, and I'm glad for that. But have you retained any of the things that you learned during COVID and still used them now?
Well, I had to help out more around the house. I wouldn't say I retained.
Brilliant. I think that all of us do things differently. And it wasn't, I'm going to say this now, and some of you may have experienced real pain, and thank you for sharing. What's your first name, sorry? Steve, thank you, Steve. It wasn't all bad. And I know some people lost people, and I know a lot of people struggle, but there were things that we have retained. There are things that we have learned. Because that's what we do as humans, right? We learn. We take experience, we process it, we gain perspective, and we move on, and we do things differently. One of the things that I learned through some of my struggles, I was diagnosed with PTSD in 2013, and I might talk a little bit more about that later. One of the things I really realised is that the issues I was experiencing as a manager, I thought, well, my team's issues were actually mine. And they were my issues that I was projecting to my team because of the state of mind that I was in. I was 18 months in therapy for my PTSD. I still have PTSD to this day with anger management issues, but you're all fine. I don't really drink a great deal anymore, so you're okay. Well, I had to really look inside and think that as a result of my own struggles, that was affecting the way that I was being a leader, and that was affecting my leadership qualities. And when I was right in the midst of that particular battle, I couldn't really see that. So what is leadership? For me, leadership is about leading by example. That's what it's about. It's the examples that we set. It's the standards that we drive. It's the standards that we aim for. That's what leadership is. Is management different? I think it is. I think it really is. Each human being is predetermined at birth to be either leader or manager. In fact, I realised at a very young age, taking my colours to the mast, I'm a leader by predisposition. I don't say that as a good thing. It's not a good thing, it's not a bad thing, Ben. It's just a thing. And in life we need to know things, right? I learned this thing at a young age when I was captain of the football team, the rugby team, the basketball team. If I did it, I wanted to be the captain, and I'd realised that I had a big gob, long legs, and I could lead from the front. What I then found in my career, in my military career, is that the more, so if this is leadership and this is management, every time I got promoted, I had to be a little bit more manager, and a little bit more manager. And then I think the reason I eventually left the army, my full-time career, is because the position I was in and the rank I was holding, I was probably expected to be this much leader versus this much manager. And maybe some of you here today who feel like that in your chosen workplaces. It may have been a fantastic place when you started, and I hope you don't all go back to work and leave your job. However, authenticity is important, and being your authentic self. Can you be enough of a leader to be your authentic self? Because if you can't be your authentic self, guess what? You might be in the wrong room. And there's nothing wrong with discovering that. There's nothing wrong with realising that. And those of us who've done management degrees, we've been through lots and lots of essays that we've written. I've written, what's the difference between leadership management? Oh my God. I failed to try and recall how many words I've written on it. And I've narrowed it down, for me, into 2 sentences. You lead by example, but you can manage by process. If you try and lead by process, or manage by example, it wouldn't necessarily work. And these are just my musings, these are the things that I think. Who were your greatest influences? So I think back to some of the managers, some of the so-called leaders that I had growing up in the armed forces. And bear in mind, I come from a background in the army. I joined in 1989. I joined for 3 years and then just forgot to get out. And I'm a cohort of people who in the year 2000 were serving in Germany. All 750 of us in our regiment were taken into the theatre in Bielefeld, where we were stationed in northwest Rhine-Farland at the time. And the commanding officer stood up and said, right, everybody, it's no longer illegal to be gay in the army. Let me just say that again. In the year 2000, we were told, it's no longer illegal to be gay in the army. I've seen change. I've seen real change in the army. I'm happy to report, though, that in 15 of the last 20 years since that period, the British Army has been quoted by Stonewall as being in the top 50 employers to work for diversity. I'm also an equality, diversity and inclusion advisor within the army as well. So what? Who were your greatest influences? I've learned just as much from some of the people who I respected the least as I have those who I aspired to be. Because you know when something happens to you and you think, wow, that was horrible. I'm never going to do that to somebody else. So, did you take the good and disregard the bad? Well, I've tried really hard to do that. I've tried to take the good from people who I see, disregard the bad from those who I didn't really respect, and then mould that with my own innate personality, who I am and what I am. Just a scally from the streets of Kirby. Little fishing village in the north of Liverpool, Kirkby, you may have heard of it. I know it doesn't sound like it today, but I promise you, I am. Grew up in Kirby, went to school there. But throughout my life, throughout every experience in my life, I've come to realise that I've taken the good and disregarded the bad. And I think that's really important because these are things that have helped me to become my most authentic self. And believe me, we could all be in a different room today where you wouldn't like some of the things that I was saying. Not because I'm particularly polarising or I say things for effect or I'm not acceptable or I'm not diverse or none of that. Just because we're different. It's not a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's just a thing. And in life, we need to know things. I think we learn these things along the way. I think as human beings in the workplace, we miss so many lessons that we just dismiss. Oh, that just happened, yeah, we were lucky there. People tell me now, oh, it's all right for you. You're lucky. Who's heard that? Who's heard that? You might be in a high-powered job, you might be in a management position, you may be earning good money, it's all right for you, you're lucky. Well, I've always found the harder I work, the luckier I get. None of these things happen by accident. What about communication and how well do you do it? So during my MBA studies, I found out that I'm not that good a listener. And listening is a really, really important communication skill. So how do I qualify that? How do I prove that? Well, for those of you who may be professionals in this area, feel free to fact check me if you think what I'm about to say is not right. But we speak at between 100 to 300 words a minute. Yet we think at between 2,000 to 3,000 words a minute. So how many times have you been in that conversation? It may have been today, it may be later today, try and hold on to it, think about it. Where someone's talking and you want to jump in because they've made a point and, yeah, I want to validate that point, I want to help, I want to, trust me, it's normal. It's okay. It's not a bad thing. And somebody who was a really good mate of mine the last couple of years, and he stood at the back of the room today, taught me a really valuable lesson. When you're in that position, and when you want to remember that really important thing, rather than jumping in on the person, which I used to do all the time, cross your fingers. If you cross your fingers, and it works, I've tried it a lot, you'll remember that point that you wanted to make. Now, if you happen to cross 4 or 5 bits of fingers, you might want to say to the other person, give a chance, mate. You know what I mean? And any chance I can contribute to this conversation, because right now you're talking at me and not to me. So communication, what about the difference between, Steve, if I can use this now as my example. So I'm Steve's boss, Ethan, Steve. Steve is Ethan's boss. And Steve comes to me and he goes, oh, I've disciplined Ethan this week. I'm like, okay, why? Because he was late. So what Steve did with Ethan, he went, why is it you've been late every day this week? The difference between that and saying, Ethan, why have you been late every day this week? more or less the same words. So Steve comes to me and he says, I've disciplined him. I'm like, okay, what did you discipline for? He was late. Why? Oh no, he was late. Oh no, why was he late, Steve? Well, I don't know, he was just late. Go and find out. So you come back to my 5 why strategy. I thought I developed this, but someone said to me recently they read it somewhere, so maybe I just read it. I'm not trying to. I'm being my most authentic self. I steal stuff. So the first why, you ask, Simon Sinek has written a book. Anyone read any of Simon Sinek's stuff? Really good in the business world. Called Start With Why. Have you read the book? So that's one of my shares today. So he always says start with why. My 5 why is, you ask the question why 5 times. Before you get to the 5th why, you'll get the root cause of the issue. So Ethan, why have you been late today, mate? I missed the bus. Why are you on the bus? You've got a car and my car's broken down. Why have you not had the car fixed? Oh, well, what it is, the wife was diagnosed with cancer last week, and money's a bit tight. I'm running around, spending all the hours God sends. That was a pretty extreme example, but that's true to some people, that experience. Start with why. And any of you in here who are leaders, and I'm going to say something now, and I absolutely mean it, and please feel free to challenge me later. If you think you have no responsibility for your workforce outside of the office, you're not a good leader. Because if you can't see that your most precious commodity, which is people, can't be affected outside of work by the things they're expected to do inside of work, you've got some work to do on yourself. And I speak to people who disagree with me all the time, and it's good, it's okay. It's fine to disagree. But if you've got a commodity, if you've got a resource, and we manage resources, don't we? 2 most precious, or the 2 greatest resources in any business, people and time. People are the most precious, time is the most important. If you don't manage one of those resources properly, and you've got people that aren't doing what you expect them to do in your workplace, I'm here to say, that's all on you. You have to care for people. You have to care about people, but you have to recognise why maybe sometimes you're struggling with the things that you need to do. So what? Here's a really simple tool. It's called the systems approach to training. You can use this in your workplace, you can use it at home. Has anybody seen this process before? Anybody seen the model? Really, really simple. You've got an issue. Anyone want to share an issue you've got in the workplace at this moment in time? Really quickly, anything at all? Okay, I'll share one in our workplace. Alex, I'm going to make it up. The staff, our apprentice Jess is quite often late for work. It's a true thing. Jess is quite often late for work. So I'll do the analysis and I'll think, well, what's the need first? You can start anywhere in this graph. The need is we need Jess to be in work before 9 o'clock each day. I'll look at the analysis. What do we do with the analysis? I'll go and talk to Jess. Jess, right, oh, the bus keeps getting delayed. Okay, well, in the last 10 days at work, you've been late 9 times. I think maybe the training I'm going to deliver is you need to get an earlier bus every day. Because then more often than not, you'll be in work on time. Then 2 weeks later, I go back to the need. Is Jess now on time? Yes, she is. It ends. Any problem, however small, however big, that's a really simple, it's called the systems approach to training. I'm getting there, I'm nearly there, James. On my watch, I've got 1 minute left. So a couple of book shares which I'm going to talk about today. Very briefly, The Second Mountain by David Brooks. Anybody read it? Elise, right? I know you have, we had a chat last week. I recommended it to Elise. She started listening to it today. What do you think?
It's really good.
Okay. So The Second Mountain is about the journey that we all take. These are available on the QR code at the end as well. So if I like in my own journey, my first mountain was surely the army. I got to the top of that and I did all the things that I wanted to do, and when I got to the summit, I felt somewhat unfulfilled. I think the position that I'm now in is what I would refer to as my second mountain. I don't know where I am on that mountain yet, but when I got to the top of the mountain in the army, it was so unrewarding and so unfulfilling. It almost coincided with the time that I went man down with PTSD and I started descending into the valley. And I realised at that stage that I needed to make some changes in my life. So here I am now, ascending my second mountain. In essence, that's what it's about. Please don't be offended if you do read it. The bloke who recommended it to me, I got through the first 2 chapters and I was like, what's stupid like that? What does he think I am? Get through that. Once you get through it, it can be useful. And then start with why. I've already mentioned that about Simon Sinek. It's so important to understand the question why. Don't just discipline someone because they're late. Don't go straight into the final tool. in your management and leadership toolbox from day one, why not try and help? We'll take questions shortly. That, for me, is me bang on time. I've got a couple of final points to make. I've already spoken about resources, about people being your most precious one, time being your most important. I've spoken a little bit about being your authentic self. We had the discussion earlier, I mentioned this to Jonathan about being your authentic self. And as I've got older, I've tried to become educated. And so what I've done is I started reading stuff, and there's an American philosopher called Charles Cooley. Anybody heard of him? Anybody read him at all? Okay, Charles Cooley says, I need to get the first bit right so I get this wrong. I am not what I think I am. I am not even what you think I am. I am what I think you think I am. And if you unpack that, to me, what that tells me is that we're all playing a game. Just before I finish, could I ask everybody, if you're able to get up on your feet, please stand up. I'm going to do one simple thing, being your most authentic self. Can you all just hold your arms, please? And what I'm now going to ask you to do within 3 seconds is fold them the opposite way. Fold your arms the opposite way. Some of you are still. Every time. Some of you speak, people at the front, you couldn't see the people behind, some of them are going. But the thing is, once you know how to do it, it's really easy to achieve. And for those of you who currently have your arms folded the opposite way, even the smallest change can feel really uncomfortable at first. But it's often the right thing to do. Thank you for your time. That's also already welcome to Sound Innovation, by the way. God, thank you.
So sometimes we mix it up. Sometimes I throw Tony under the bus and ask him to share his own journey a little bit more. But today I'm not going to do that actually. We're going to ask for some participation from you guys. Everything that we spoke about between the three of us is trying to get people to be open, trying to get people to be a bit more, it's okay to have, a few things going on. It's okay, nobody is perfect. What is the word perfect? Nobody and nothing in this world is perfect. We all have issues, we all have stuff going on. We all need to speak, we all need to connect, we all need to be open to actually connecting, speaking and getting used to it. Because that's the way it will be okay. That is the way that will be okay. So I'm going to throw it back over to these two gentlemen and ask them to do a quick exercise with everybody. Yeah?
That QR code will stay up till the end until you leave, so please feel free. The resources that we spoke about on there, scan the QR code later. James.